welcome along. We have our wonderful two Brains Trust people with us. I'm sure one day we'll get some more little faces on the screen as well, but some of you are watching later on, and well done. And hopefully the person who told me that they watched last week's and fell asleep can stay awake this week. I won't mention who that was.
Ooh.
You never know. Maybe they'll make it through tonight. They're going to go back and watch the rest that they fell asleep through. So, yeah, thinking about some of the stuff that came out of the Intergenerate conference last Tuesday. And so the keynote speaker was David Sinos. And of course, as someone said, so nice to know how to pronounce his name, as you can see. So nice when someone says, oh, it's Sinos, because you look at that and go, okay. But yes, so drawing on his book, A Gospel for All Ages. And so the logical place to start, if you're starting an conference about intergenerational, is what is intergenerational? So I thought we would look at that tonight and his comments, drawing a lot on some work done by Chris Barnett, who was intergenerational person in Vic Tas Synod. Now he's doing some consultancy work and doing a short-term thing with Assembly around intergenerational. So it's always nice when you go, oh, this person in Canada is quoting from an Australian Uniting Church person. Yay, look at us. Woohoo! So must be doing something all right. So
yep.
he's yeah, so it's that sense of intergenerational can be thought of as the opposite of segregating. And Chris sort of points to four sort of stages or ways that the different generations might interact. Again, picking up conversation I had with Jock last week, I think it was. He was mentioning someone who sort of complains about intergenerational because it focuses on the children and forgets this sort of young adults group. And I was trying to remind that, you know, when we talk about intergenerational, it merely means two or more generations together, which might include children, but might not include children. And if you stop and think about churches, often you have the older group that want the hymns, the younger ones that want something else, and you have this fight. You don't necessarily have the two working together sort of thing. So can be, how do we include children, but can be broader than that. But some of the examples I'll give will be related to children because that just works nicely and you can imagine that. So let me do some screen sharing so we can see. Yes, share. Okay, and if I go like that, hopefully, no, it's going to do yes. Okay, I've got a big. So hopefully you can see that. So probably the traditional way that the church has dealt with the different generations is age segregation. So people of different ages are separate from each other based on their belief that all ages have different needs and relationships across the ages do not exist. So you have your Sunday school, you have your youth group, you have your young adults program, and they probably meet in the evening. You have your families come to the family service. You have your older people come to the hymn service. And you have all these things where the different ages might be at the same church, but they never really connect with one another. So age segregation, people of different ages are separate from each other based on the belief that all ages have different needs and relationships across the ages do not exist. So we can all think of those churches that have those, you know. Belmont on Newcastle was very much the 8 o'clock service was the oldies, the 9:45 was the families, the kids went out to Sunday school, the evening twice a month was youth, others it was a bit of a mixture. So we got a little bit there, but then some moved to a multi-generational. So there's tolerance living alongside and superficial and polite interaction. And there's limited interaction between the ages. So this might be where you go, oh, we'll put a table down the back where the kids can do some drawing sheets and activities. So they're in the same space, but there's really no interaction. The kids have their thing, and the church service is really for the adults. You know, you might chuck in a kids talk or something like that, but really the two generations are together, but they're doing quite separate things. So that's obviously a step forward or a step along the thing that, yes, we're realizing we want other generations with us, and maybe we just don't know how to do that, or this seems the comfortable place. The next step is cross-generational. So there's some sharing, listening and learning, but little individual or collective transformation. So it might be like there's the kids' activity table and the adults also go and interact there a bit. So there's some connection there. Relationships exist between the generations, but the church has yet to take any intentional and significant steps to foster transformation. So we've got them there, we're interacting a bit, but we're not really deliberately going, how do we hear from one another? We're just going, we've got this activity and the parents or the adults can go and help or something like that. Then fourthly, you move to intergenerational. And Barnett said is one that actually nurtures the space where there is mutuality, equality, and reciprocity. Don't you love big words? That makes individual or collective transformation more likely. So we now have the different generations working together. We're learning from one another. There's mutuality, there's equality. It's not, oh, the adults are important and the kids are just there, but everyone's seen as equal, and there's give and take on both sides. So they've seen us drawing on Chris Barnett. You might move from age segregation to multi-generation. The generations are now in the room, but they're not interacting with each other. Cross-generational, they're starting to interact. Intergenerational, it's all becoming more even and we're hearing from one another. Any comments about that? Rod's on mute.
Yes, no, I just so that Snuffles and Stiffles didn't interact with your discussion. I'm not sure where you're going to after this little bit here, but really, I think to move on, other than moving on in ignorance, there's a lot of big words, and it wasn't just those last few you're referring to. Mutuality, equality, that's easy enough, and reciprocity. I think even some of the little bits, understanding what individual collective transformation is, yes, I can understand what they might be, but really in reality, what would I expect to see if I walked into a cross-generational church? How would I identify those things for a start? Then secondly, it sounds really like many of those things had been achieved previously in church circles where you might have at some stage sent some kids out at a certain time, but at other times you were inclusive of them, you did listen to them, they participated, or you appeared to listen to them, hence the definition of what listening is and what our individual transformation might be. But I can look back and say, oh, didn't we used to do that before we started to do something else? And I'm not going back that many years, maybe a few, but I just wonder whether we had been there and have moved away, as opposed to you have to go back generations to identify that, were we ever there or not? That's my concern here. I see those great definitions, 4 of them. Thank you, Mr. Barnett, and I think I spelled his name right this time. But there's lots of words in there which I would need to understand before I'd think I'll be able to go beyond these 4 dot points.
Yep. And yes, and that's what I liked, the story of sort of the children's table and how that interacted in each stage. That helped for me to go, okay, what does that look like? Okay, we've put a kids table in, I can see, or we've had our family service, we've added a hymn, therefore,
yes,
or something.
yeah.
Yes.
Because my notes before I realized where we were going to here, what we might have been talking about here, I had this big question. Okay, when we get to that final one, intergenerational, have we somehow managed to meet the different needs and therefore know what they are, whether it's a 2, 3, 4, or 5 generational, and not necessarily great grandma, but there might be people in between that are different between my generation and my kids' generation. There's someone in the middle, which needs to be catered for as well. So my question, as I was going through it, was, when we get there, have we actually somehow identified that there are different needs and met them? Or have we suddenly realized there ain't no different needs, it's just people have to change, which is a worrying point, but it's a very valid point. Now I can say, I want my hymns, or I want my modern songs, and definition of modern, of course, is questionable. Or do I change and be tolerant, more accepting, realize that there are other things there, and I can open myself up to hearing the word irrespective of my age, my disposition on the day, my feeling of the kid kicking me in the back, or of my kid kicking the person in the front in the back, that I can be part of the service there. So those are the questions that I had as I was hearing some of these things coming through. The big one being, how do we meet, or is there anything to be met? Have we just blinded ourselves thinking that we have to be different for each group, and therefore somehow bring those differences together, and in fact find in the end there is no difference?
Yep. Cool. Kylie, any thoughts, comments?
Sort of the same with, if you go to learning styles, like some are visual, some need to see it. It doesn't matter what age you are. So adults will enjoy the stories, kids will enjoy the stories, but it's in that, like what you were saying, as soon as you introduce a story, oh, this must be for the kids. Whereas it might be just, no, this is for the visual people. This is for those who like creativity, who like stories. As soon as you say, oh, get up and do this task, like go and write on a leaf and put it at the cross, I think we've got to get past this is how church is always done. We sit in the pew, we don't speak, we just face the front. And also, totally off that point, is you've also got, and this is probably a big worm jar, like you've got your people our age with children, but you've also got people our age without children. That is a totally different demographic. So within demographics, there's different demographics.
Yep.
Okay, there you go.
Generations, there's people who are experiencing things differently. Yes. So part of this session, we then sort of answered questions of, in that continuum, where do you feel most comfortable? Then where do you think your congregation is? And where would you like it to be? And thankfully everyone went to the intergenerational, which would have been a problem if we're at an intergenerational conference and we're all down the age segregation. But and then some of the comments that brought up led Tammy to talk about that maybe it's not actually a continuum where you go from here to here to here to here, but we move this culture to being intergenerational. But there will be times when that plays out as cross-generational. There'll be times where that plays out as multi-generational, and there'll be places where that's age segregated. So, of course, part of the intergenerational thing is it's not just, everything we do must have every generation together. There is need for, that age-specific stuff sometimes. That's clear in the Here to Stay. Yes, one of the bases is intergenerational, but we also need those peer relationship things which happen within age-specific groups. So I guess within experts, there's different ways of looking at it. Are we on a continuum where you must move from age segregation to multi-generation, or is it we have this new culture of thinking? How do we include everyone? How do we listen to everyone? And on Sunday morning at this or in the evening service, that looks like intergenerational. In the morning, it's a bit more age segregation. But if you come to the family service, it's very much intergenerational and things like that. So, and in the holidays, maybe it becomes, because there's no Sunday school, it moves from age segregation to multi-generational or whatever. So yes, that struggle of, does it have to be just one of those, or can a church live out multiple of those and that's okay?
Could you also we were going to, I think, have once a month where everyone comes pumped and ready to be in that mode.
Yep.
Your other 3 weeks you can be in your little safety net, but we come pumped, we're right, and we'll find a way of pushing ourselves.
Yep. And one of the clear things through last Tuesday was it takes time. Imagine that in the church. Things take time. And it's about taking it step by step. So you're never going to go from age segregation to intergenerational like that. And it's going to take time. And so maybe it's helpful to think about those stages of how do we move it, but also that challenge of, yes, intergenerational, we want to include everyone, but for people to get the most out of it, maybe sometimes there needs to be some segregation. Because our kids do think differently, and even within the older groups. Rod's about to say something, but he's still on mute.
It got me off, just pushed the button. I was going to say 2 things. One, that last bit you said is sometimes the kids, what'd you say? The implication there was we need to segregate. Maybe sometimes then we need to actually be whatever other level that we could get to, multi-cross or intergenerational, and hear them. That's obviously where we want to go to.
Yes.
But I was going to say before, you said about, isn't that moving fast? You expect it to move slow. That was the Uniting News, that the opening discussion there this week was, why is God going so slow? And that might be very relevant for our intergenerational. I have yet to read the detail and bring out anything for there, but whether it's fast or slow, there's obviously not just us recognizing it. It's the worry. Maybe we're the ones going slow. God's pumping us along, but we're slowing it down. Yes. Okay. With only a few minutes to go, did I stop you moving on to another area, Richard, with my questions there? Because to me, some of those things, like I can see, because if you were to ask me before you made one of the last statements there, I would have said as having reread your definitions, I would have said the family service was at cross-generational. However, I see the difference is cross-generational, the church has yet to take any intentional or significant steps to foster transformation. Whereas I guess in the family service, the church, the people, yourselves, have taken intentional step to foster transformation in both generations. It may not be seen, recognised by those there and or those looking in, but the steps have been taken. So I guess that's the tick to put us on our way. The next question is then making that service one that anybody else then through different age groupings could come and be comfortable and say it is truly intergenerational because I can fit in there, whether I'm that young leader, 20-25 year age bracket who is not looking for kids yet, Kylie, and hasn't got them, or as you said, that late 30s, late 40s that are in a situation where they haven't got them, or they have and they are brand new to this and they fit in because we've managed to find the key, one, to foster transformation. That's the important bit. And I guess one could always question in our segregation and other things, are we intentionally fostering? We're probably trying to. Are we effectively fostering transformation in the method that we're using? And maybe the answer is no. That's why we want to move off that one onto the intergenerational perspective. It's very hard to say I'm not being effective in my teachings, but maybe that's what is happening in other situations. The way we're doing it is not being effective.
And always in the
key. I was just saying that seems to be the key here, at least in this definition by Barnett, is the intentional fostering of transformation.
Yep.
And I would have thought the word in there is effective would be important.
Yep.
Because I can intentionally foster it, but in an effective way.
Sure. And always in the back of my mind with family services, how do we push it to intergenerational and it doesn't become cross-generational? Because yes, it's easy to become the kids do the activities and the adults just follow them around and supervise, and it's really for the kids. I'm liking that now when we're having conversation around the story, we're getting kids and adults giving me answers, which is what I want. It's like, how do we focus? We've been thinking and occasionally bringing in some videos and stuff that, okay, while your child is doing this activity, adults, you can watch this video that unpacks this theme a bit more. So yes, definitely would be very easy for what we're doing in the family service to become cross-generational. And it means, and it needs that intentionality of going, no, we don't want to go there. We want to be intergenerational. So totally agree with you.
I want to transform you.
Yes.
Subliminally, but the intention is to transform each age group in some way.
Yes. This isn't just about, this is a lovely new form of Sunday school, but this is us all learning together and learning from one another. Yep. Wonderful thoughts. Excellent. Well,
next week we pick up those challenging.
So next week we'll look at why preaching matters and what preaching is. So
what preaching is, that's what I want to hear. Is that a Phil Smith one or someone else pick that up?
No, this is more of Dave Senos.
Oh, more, okay.
But he starts with, if we're talking about intergenerational preaching, you probably have to define what intergenerational is, and you have to define what preaching is.
Preaching is, yes.
So we'll have a bit of a chat about that. And will we blow people's minds? Who knows? But thank you for joining us again. Have a wonderful week. Thank you for joining us, whoever you are watching at a later date. Well done if you've stayed awake for the whole time. And we'll catch you round soon.
Bye.
Thanks, Kylie. Bye.
See ya.